Scorched Earth, Ark's hardest DLC. Filled with dangerous creatures and annoying weather effects, this map is not friendly for the early game survivors. And I gave myself 50 days to beat this map. But before we get started, I want to thank Luke the Notable and Zany Zebra for giving me this idea. So without further ado, let's start with day 1. I woke up in the desert and started collecting some basic resources like fiber, thatch and wood. With these I was able to make some tools like a stone pick, a hatchet and some cloth armor. I then killed some jabos for their hide. I then knocked out a jabo and tamed it. I didn't have a name at the time, so I just called it I don't have a name. I started attacking a parasaur and it got itself stuck. So I harvested a lot of hide and raw meat. Whilst I was making my way to the red obelisk, I got jumped by 2 raptors and they killed me and my jerboa. I eventually got back to my body and grabbed my loot. When I arrived at the red obelisk, I tamed the moss chops that I named Sour Cream. For those who don't know, moss chops are amazing creatures at the start, because they're pretty strong and very good for harvesting. I made a set of hide armor and started laying a foundation down for a small base. On day 2 I was still making some structures for the base and I also got my moss chops killed by a parasaur. I forgot to mention I also tamed a low level scorpion, but I can't really find the footage of it. I made a mortar and pestle and some forges so I can smelt my metal. I started harvesting some rocks so I can get enough metal for a smithy and a metal pick. On day 3, all my metal smelted and I made a smithy and a metal pick. Later on I made some desert cloth because this keeps you safe from the scorching heat. I also knocked out a level 8 Lymantia, but it died to a scorpion. But later I found a level 12 and I decided to tame it. I named him Flick and made a saddle for it. I then flew to the mountains and farmed a little bit of metal. After flying around for a bit, I found the Morelltops was stuck, so I knocked it out with a boomerang and named it Camel. On day 4 I started farming some resources for a trap, because I wanted to tame an Argentavis. I built a trap and lured in a level 92 Argentavis. I knocked it out and fed it some mutton from a nearby sheep. I made a saddle for it and started looking for a Doedicurus. I found one and I knocked it out with a boomerang. Doedics are probably the best stone and sand gatherers in the game and they will help a lot with building my future base. Whilst waiting for it to wake up, I started farming some metal. On day 5 I looted some drops and also farmed some stone. I started looking for an Ankylosaurus so I could farm a lot of metal. I found this level 60 Anky and I tamed it. I then went on my first big metal run. After returning to my base and putting all the metal in the forges, I found a level 116 Thorny Dragon and I had to tame it. It got stuck between some rocks and I knocked it out. Thorny Dragons are basically the only good wood collectors on Scorched Earth. On day 6 I collected drops for the entire day. I spent days 7, 8, 9 and 10 farming resources for a new base. It took so long because I was planning on building my base out of adobe, which is very expensive. On day 10 I started making the shell of my base. It was just going to be a simple 5x5 for the gate.
One eternity later.
Day 11 and 12 was spent making structures for a base and transferring all of my resources from my old base to the new base. On day 13 I farmed some more advanced resources like metal, crystal and obsidian. And I even made myself a fabricator and started making some electronics. Day 14 I was planning to farm some organic polymer, but I found this level 104 thyla, and I started farming some stone for a trap. I picked it up with my RG and dropped it in the trap. I knocked it out and fed it some cooked prime meat. This thyla was going to be very helpful for exploring the artifact caves. On day 15 I made a generator and some wind turbines. I spent a big part of the day farming silica pearls. Silica pearls are quite easy to get on Scorched Earth because there are a lot of dried up rivers where you can get pearls using a whip or just your hands. At the end of the day I made a lot of electronics and also a chemistry bench. On day 16 I made myself 2 refrigerators and went on a really big metal run. Later on I killed a lot of mantises for their organic polymer. Day 17 was spent making adobe structures for a hatching platform, and at the end of the day I finally got enough resources for an industrial forge, and I placed it on top of my base. Day 18 I farmed metal for the entire day. Day 19 and 20 I farmed drops for a long time. I didn't really get anything good besides an apprentice flak chest piece. Day 21 I placed down all the air conditioners that I would need to hatch a wyvern egg. Day 22 I did the exact same thing as I've done for the past few days. I just farmed metal and got some drops. I do not have the footage for day 23, I just farmed resources that I would need to get a wyvern egg. On day 24 it was finally time to go get a wyvern egg. I went to the wyvern trench and built a little base with turrets on it. And at first it was going fine, but then I tried to grab a lightning wyvern egg. So I respawned on the bed I made and died again. And then I got my Argentavis killed, but eventually I got back to my little base. But then I got attacked by a level 106 lightning wyvern, so I just spawned back at my base and grabbed my thyla. I got my stuff back and ran back home with my egg. Day 25 and 26 were spent hatching and raising my lightning wyvern, and I also made a cryopod. And on day 26 I killed a lot of creatures with my wyvern so I can get some levels. I randomly came across this low level terror bird that was stuck in a rock, and I tamed it for some reason. On day 27 I decided to get my first artifact. I went to the church cave that contained the artifact of the destroyer. This was one of the 3 artifacts you needed to spawn the alpha manticore. Still on day 27 I made myself some trank darts and started looking for a high level Rex. I came across this level 102 and made a trap for it. I led it into the trap and knocked it out. It eventually tamed and I named it Freddy. I wanted to level up my Rex by killing deathworms from the deserts, but then I accidentally cryo-sicked my Rex and I had to wait all the way from day 28 for it to wake up. On day 28 I killed a lot of deathworms so I can level up my Rex and my wyvern. On day 29 I placed a bunch of stone pipes and placed an industrial cooker which can make me some med brews. On day 30 I went to go get the second artifact, namely the artifact of the crag. It was very easy because nearly all the caves on Scorched Earth are quite easy. Still on day 30 I found a level 144 Daedon and I absolutely needed it to fight the Manticore. Daedons can heal your dinos at the cost of its food, so I picked it up with my wyvern, dropped it in the trap and knocked it out. I tamed it and I named it Bacon. Daedons tame pretty quickly because they eat a lot of food. And on day 31, I started hatching a fire wyvern egg that I found in the trench. The rest of day 31 was spent searching for a female Rex so I can start my army of Rexes. There's a spot on Scorched Earth where there will always be a Rex. If you kill a Rex, another one would spawn. So I just killed the low levels and hoped that a high level female Rex would spawn. On day 32, I finally found a level 96 female Rex and I wanted to tame it. So I led it into the trap, knocked it out and fed it prime meat. When the Rex was tamed, I named it Chica. Day 33 and 34 were spent leveling my Rex and my Wyvern in the desert. On day 35 and 36 I killed a lot of Wyverns for their talons, because you need 20 talons of each variant of Wyverns to spawn the Alpha Manticore. And on day 36 I started hatching some Rex eggs so I can start my army for the boss fights. On day 37 I raised even more Rexes and imprinted them. On day 38 I went to get the final artifact, which was the artifact of the Gatekeeper, and it was extremely easy to get. Now I have all the artifacts to spawn the Manticore. On day 39 I for some reason wanted to tame a Mantis. Mantises are passive tames that eat deathworm horns. I found a level 102 Mantis and tried to tame it, but it just wouldn't cooperate. It constantly aggroed on me despite the fact I was wearing full ghillie armor and I even had a cactus broth. I was still trying to tame the Mantis on day 40, but I just couldn't tame it. It still wasn't tamed by day 41, so I killed it and went home. I hatched a bunch of Rex eggs and later tamed a Titanoboa for some unholy reason. Titanoboas are these big snakes that passively eat eggs. So I found a level 96 Titanoboa and fed it some spare Rex eggs that I had. Still on day 41, I went to the desert and tamed myself a vulture. Vultures are tamed by feeding them spoiled meat. But I still wanted to tame a mantis, so after doing a bit of research, I found out that most creatures become a lot less aggressive when they're in water. So I picked up a level 96 mantis, dropped it in the water near the blue obelisk and finally tamed it. On day 42 and 43, I started preparing my army. I put a saddle on all my Rexes and started leveling them. I leveled them by killing baby Rexes, which sounds really weird, but baby creatures give a lot of XP. On day 44 I went looking for a Eutyrannus. Eutyrannuses can do a courage roar, which buffs all the creatures nearby, so this would be quite handy for my army. So I found a level 162 Euty and led it into the trap. And knocks it out and it eventually tamed. On day 45 and 49 I farmed more wyvern talons because I still needed some to spawn the Alpha Manticore. On day 47 I basically didn't have anything to do anymore. My entire army was done and I had all the tributes to spawn the boss. So from this day till day 49 I just did a lot of random things. So the first thing I did was tame an Arthroplura. I just dropped an Arthro in the water and fed it spoiled meat. On day 48 I tamed a raptor that I called Craptor, and I also started fishing. It didn't really give me any good loot, but it was a good way to burn some time. On day 49 I just sat on a chair and enjoyed the view. On day 50 it was finally time to fight the Alpha Manticore. I grabbed all the tributes and summoned the boss.